In a key U.S. Senate race in Utah, an independent candidate could be within striking distance of the Republican incumbent. Evan McMullin, a Republican turned independent, is facing off against Senator Mike Lee in November. The former presidential candidate is attempting to gather support from both sides of the aisle. While McMullin is considered the underdog in the race, some polls have shown the two candidates separated by single digits. For more on this, Evan McMullin joins us now. He is an independent Senate candidate in Utah. Also a note that we extended an invitation to your opponent, Senator Lee, but his campaign has not yet responded. Evan, thanks so much for being with us. I want to really kind of start out with the dynamics of this race. How are you trying to make it more competitive? And I know that you have a big rally tomorrow. So what is your message to voters as you enter this post-Labor Day sprint?
Well, thanks, Nicole, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. This race continues to tighten. Those polls that you shared are the most recent public polls. However, we've seen the race continue to tighten even since that, even more so. And so what we're doing here in Utah is something unique in American politics. We're building a coalition of Republicans, Democrats, and independents to stand up to our broken politics, to stand up to the politics of division and extremism that are doing so much damage to our country and that our incumbent senator here, Senator Lee, has come to embody. We know that our state's interests and our country's interests are poorly served by the politics of division and extremism. And so we'll be talking about that at the rally tomorrow and about Senator Lee's attempts to topple our democracy by overturning our last election. He was involved in the effort to recruit fake electors to do that. And that's just not something that most Utahns are going to stand for. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in our system of self-government, our democratic republic, and we're building a coalition to defend it.
And why do you think a more centrist message, if you will, is one that will resonate with voters despite the steep climb of third-party candidates that they sometimes have historically faced in this country?
Well, most of the time, independents run against both parties at the same time, and they don't build coalitions, and that's why they struggle. But in this case, we're taking a different approach. I've invited Democrats, independents, and Republicans to join this effort, and they are. Principled Republicans are supporting us. The Democrats voted not to field their own candidate, but rather to join our campaign. The third party, the United Utah Party here in Utah, they voted to do the same. And so we've made a tremendous amount of progress already, learning lessons from past independent campaigns about how the way to win as an independent is to build a cross-partisan coalition. And people, frankly, are fed up with the broken politics now that are causing so many problems in our country. Out here in Utah, we've got higher inflation than almost every other state, high costs of healthcare. We're in a severe drought. We have water shortages, air quality issues. I could just go on and on about all the challenges that are just mounting and compounding. We've got to have leaders who will work across party lines to solve problems. We have one senator, and Senator Romney, who does that here in Utah, but we have another senator, and Senator Lee, who is, I'll say, refusing to engage constructively in the legislative process. And Utah just can't afford that any longer. We've got to have change, and most Utahns want it.
As you're well aware, Mormon voters are a key constituency in your state. Both senators and the governor represent the state nationally. 2020 exit polls show Donald Trump won the state against President Biden by a 20-point margin. How do you plan to appeal to the roughly 60% of Utah residents who identify as Mormon?
Well, I'll tell you this. My family's been in Utah since the mid-1800s, and my ancestors fled religious persecution in Europe and on the East Coast, trekked across the plains and the Rockies in order to find true freedom and opportunity here in Utah. When they arrived, they knew that they had to work together with other people who were here, other immigrants to Utah. And that was the only way to survive and thrive in this harsh environment. And so that's still part of our culture here in Utah, that we work together to solve problems. We stick to principle, but while still finding common ground to overcome major challenges. It's been a part of Utah since the mid-1800s and when it became a state in the late 1800s, and it's still a part of our culture now. And so when we see someone like Senator Lee, who refuses to work with others, even members of his own party, to get things done, we know that that's not the right way. That's not the way Utah thrives. And so that's part of why people want change, but part of why our message is resonating as much as it is.
On Capitol Hill, senators are now back in session and may soon consider a bill to codify same-sex marriage. If you were in the Senate, is that legislation you would support?
I support marriage equality. Look, I think we have to get to a place in our country where we honor and respect and even defend each other's freedoms to make personal decisions for ourselves. You know, we're not always going to agree on every decision that we all make. That's natural. We're a country of 330 million people. We have our differences, but I think we can come together and support each other's freedom to make decisions, personal decisions for ourselves. That's what it means to be an American. That's what our country stands for, and I think that's important.
And lastly, I want to draw on your expertise as a former CIA officer. What are your thoughts on the FBI search of MarALago and former President Trump's handling of classified documents?
Well, it's difficult to understand why on earth the president would walk out of the White House with such highly classified materials. I mean, these are some of the most sensitive secrets that our country has. We risk CIA personnel and the lives of other national security professionals in order to obtain that information in many cases. We obtain it from sources who are also risking their lives. And there just is no reason why a president, a former president, would steal, I would say, that kind of information from the U.S. government, from the White House. It's just completely unacceptable. I don't know why former President Trump did that, but there are no good reasons. And of course, the investigation will explore why he did that. I'm not in a position to say I don't know, but I do know that there's just no good reason for it. And it was an incredible breach of national security to have that kind of information floating around the basement of MarALago, of all places. So nobody is above the law, despite what Trump's allies say. He should be held accountable under the law appropriately. And I'm not an attorney, and so others will make that decision. But I do think that those who claim that he somehow is above the law on this are dead wrong. We have to protect our national security. It's about protecting Americans, keeping Americans safe. And a big part of that is ensuring that our national security information and our ability to obtain it is protected, even from former presidents who treat that information carelessly or recklessly, as it may be.
All right, Evan McMullin, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.